How does this financial problem affect your ability to make decisions on the country's finances?
Well, I don't know that there's a financial problem, unless, are you alluding directly to the foreclosure?
Yeah.
Okay, and again, it was my problem. It's a financial issue. So I guess the question that voters are going to have to think about in this campaign is this. Melissa being Joe Walsh. Here's Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh made $30,000, $40,000 last year. Struggling to pay his bills, had a foreclosure a year or two ago because he couldn't keep up the payments on that condominium. In many ways, he's like a lot of people in this district. Which again, it goes to your point, this is something I certainly want to articulate in the general. Perhaps I should have more in the primary. Not a lot of time. If you think of it as a financial problem, then what's the criteria to run for Congress? Does one have to make a certain amount of money? Can one not be behind on certain bills, especially in the times we're living in today? I've never had a bankruptcy. Can a candidate not have had a bankruptcy 6 or 7 or 8 years ago? Foreclosing on a condominium, is that a disqualifier? I mean, my answer to all of these would be absolutely no. I think most voters would say no.
It's an $860,000 house that you're paying $3,300 a month on. There are houses in Arlington Heights, Palatine, Mundelein, and Barrington, and throughout the area that, regardless of community, it's an $860-something thousand house. You're paying $3,300 a month. To me, and to a lot of people, that sounds like a rich man's rent. How do you rectify $3,300 a month in rent with, oh, I'm just a regular guy, I'm not a rich man?
Remember, we made a conscious decision from the moment we left Evanston to stay close to Evanston for my kids. So my circle of where I was going to look for a house to rent was very small. Did not include Arlington Heights, Palatine, and Barrington, because my kids go to school here, their life was there. Even in June of '09, my youngest was entering Loyola.
What about Niles, Morton
Skokie.
Grove, Skokie?
All fine communities. And again, I can keep hit myself over the head. I overextended myself, no doubt. I cannot wait to move into wherever I'm going to move into in a month and pay a rent, hopefully half that.
I think you misunderstood my question. This wasn't a question about whether you live in the 8th or not. The communities I just mentioned, most of them aren't in the 8th. My question was, well, but you're saying I'm not a rich man. You should have known I was a rich man. I'm not a rich man. I'm a regular Joe. But yet you're living in a house that has $3,300 a month in rent.
For that area, that's a fairly low rent for that area. And again, Russell, the communities you picked out in the 10th, Arlington Heights, Palatine, that's a heck of a lot further away from where my kids' school and my kids' lives are.
So you're looking for the least, you're saying you were looking for the least expensive house in that community?
Yes, but I mean, fair point. Niles, Skokie, maybe a tad further away, but there I probably could have found more reasonable rents. Yes. We had been in Winnetka for a couple years. We were familiar with the area. Again, it seemed, remember, my entire motivation since I got divorced in 2004, since this big old transition in my life occurred, was my life is my kids, I will not disrupt them. So we moved to Winnetka. Perhaps that was a bit of a stretch. But then we're there in Winnetka, struggling to pay rent. The thought of then moving my kids into a whole nother community, again, seemed disruptive. So at that point then, we looked, what's the least expensive home we can rent right here, where we're just basically moving down the street.